Have you worked with anybody that's a teacher that's coming out of the K through 12 or the higher ed world?
That's a really good question. I've briefly across our team, there's a few folks that came from that world. I
Yes,
haven't
there
had,
are.
yeah, yeah, we've got a couple.
What transferable skills do you see that they've brought to the table from the K through 12 and higher ed world?
I think one thing is structure and focus on the outcomes is very apparent. So when you're talking to those contacts, they ask very specific questions to get you to outline what should this person be able to do at the end of this. Almost to the point though, sometimes where it's so structured that because that's one thing that I feel like when you're working like me, for instance, I don't have the formal education. So sometimes some of the lingo and the phrases that come up, it's just like I get what you mean, but if you use the same phrase or the same like taxonomy that 10 different times and repeat it to me, it's like, no, we need to follow this. You can get lost in the sauce a little bit. So one thing that I've noticed is when you have folks that have the formal background, they like to advertise what they know in that field and they like to advertise the knowledge. And I understand that because they paid a great deal for them. They're in a very experienced, and they essentially went back into that same world where they learned their stuff. So that structure is very easy to cling to. But sometimes I guess they don't ask questions in a way that a layman might be able to be like, oh, this is what I mean. And they can't sometimes translate what I'm saying into the outcomes based on their criteria. And I think the value that comes out of it, like the structure is good, but being that good communicator and being able to be a little bit more relaxed in how you get those outcomes, because sometimes the process can be a little intimidating. If you're not from that world and you're trying to contribute to something and you keep on like, no, that's not right. I need you to tell me this. And there's only so many times that can happen in a conversation before you just feel like you're inept. And you don't know what you don't know. And it's being pointed out over and over again throughout the needs analysis process, I guess.
So somebody coming out of the teaching field should maybe not lean so heavily on the learning structures, the taxonomies and the theories and things like that.
Yeah, because people, I think, see the output, and once they see what they need, I mean, they can do it. But they don't. I don't know that they need to know that because they're not the expert in it, right? That's their expertise is knowing all of those different theories, and then they should be able to package whatever the SME gives them into those working theories. But I don't know that the SME needs to be an expert in them or needs to understand the catchphrases that are used.
So are you describing like almost like a muscle memory that it just kind of happens in the background?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That it's not something that's brought to the forefront and that it's talked about heavily in every like design meeting or every
Mm-hmm.
brainstorming session. It's just you take it in and you apply what you know in the background and you spit out your result.
Yeah. Yeah, because otherwise I think people they get distracted and overwhelmed by what they don't know, and then they can't focus on what they really need to ask and what they really need to articulate of like this is what I'm trying to get to. I need these people to be able to do this at the end of the day. So me personally, because I just with some of the SMEs even that we worked with, sometimes if we would get in the weeds with them about the tools that we were going to use, or oh, then we're going to take this and then we've got to do it this way. I think some of them kind of checked out because they're there for their expertise. They don't know how to train someone on it necessarily. They know how to transfer their knowledge maybe, and they know how to provide what they know, but they don't know what the magic stuff that's happening in between that actually causes that to be successful.
I know that for me, when I approach things, because I come out of the movie world, because I come
Mhm.
from that world of guerrilla filmmaking,
Uh,
that guerrilla filmmaking style, I tend to take a little piece of this thing, a little piece of this thing, and a little piece of this thing. And when I think of a tool like Storyline, I think of it in its component parts and what those component parts can give me as opposed to the whole. And a lot of times when I solve a problem, I use a little bit of this thing and a little bit of this thing and a little bit of this thing, and I mush them kind of together to get a different thing. And I've noticed that a lot of people that come out of the education world, they don't think like that. They tend to, it's a storyline. It has to be a storyline thing.
mhm.
It has to be a PowerPoint or it has to be a video or well, but you can take pieces of storyline and mix it into a Rise site. You can take pieces of video and you can take that video and you can build that in PowerPoint and you can take that video and apply it into Rise and mix that with a quiz that you built over in Storyline, and it's this magic mashup of things, as opposed to,
Mhm.
the tool is the tool and the tool is God, so to speak.
Again, it's hard for people to connect to it has to do, this has to happen, then this has to happen, because that's not the real world. And not everything happens in the order that you would expect it to.
Right.
And I think if we design things of like, no, this is the way it goes, and this is how you need to know it, it's just like, but when I get on the phones and I get that first client complaint, the first thing that they ask me is going to be like, oh, how do I need to log on? It's like, oh, great, that's the first thing in my course. That's not real world. So I think maybe that's where the disconnect and how those two philosophies
Mhm.
work together. So you're designing a more world-like experience where there's bits and pieces of things that you can bring together to package. And it makes it more, in my opinion, like I like the variety,
Mhm.
because if you start and it's the same thing throughout the whole thing, I tend to get checked out at like minute 10 unless I really need to know it. And even then, it's just like, I'll just wait till I get the question.